Good morning, folks, and welcome to day 38 of the young Thug RICO trial. As yesterday, I am doing this recording in the middle of the night. And wiser from yesterday, I got up even a bit earlier than yesterday because I don't want to be late for work today as well. Yeah, we left off with a very, very nice cop who testified to the best of her abilities, and in that, kind of ruined the state's case. Kinda. At least in this part, she has done an amazing job on the stand, but that is thanks to great cross-examination. And that was on trial day 36. Day 37 was a hearing day, and not much of interest happened on that day. So I'm jumping straight into day 38, and we will simply see how far we get. Okay, that's on today's show. All right, I'm going straight into it. Let's go.
Mr. Adams and Ms. Renard, good morning.
Okay, and straight into
Mr.
roll
Kendrick
call.
and Ms. Hangerty, good morning. Misty Williams, good morning. Smith, Ingram Waller, is that spot. The information I have, this next exhibit marked as the next court exhibit in order. It is the information I have given defense counsel about our hotspot. And we have 20 up to.
Oh, yeah. Defense so far has not been able to access the courthouse internet. They have been relying on going outside in the breaks to research, bringing paper in. The state, they have their own private hub inside the court, and the defense don't. I don't get it, because they knew it was a huge trial and it was going to last forever. It's not that hard to make a private login for this at all. If you're at least that's what I've heard from people who knows those things, but apparently it's very, very hard for the IT person in that courthouse.
20 devices. That's the best I can do. You've been given the Wi-Fi name and the password. I will go ahead and include that as the next court exhibit in order, and I will seal it as well. So do not give out that information to anybody else. That is for you use only while you're in here, and 20 is the maximum number that particular spot will give. So, Mr. Manager, does that satisfy your technology challenges?
Close.
Well, you're gonna have to deal with the rest to make it up, okay? All right, because that's the best I can do with the technology, and I'm checking with our IT folks. Okay? All right. Did Mr. Kearns give you the brand new Wi-Fi password?
Okay.
That's why it's not working, because the device itself generates a passcode. So if you all want to come up here and make sure you have the right.
Yeah, the wonders of the interwebs. But
All right, anything I need to take up, folks, before I call for our jurors? I was just trying to be nice, Mr. Adams. I really wasn't trying to take up anything. Okay, all right.
Just want you to back that up.
Okay, hold on, we got to talk.
Judge, earlier this morning, the state provided us with a state's exhibit that's labeled 122CA, 122CB. Essentially what it is
Is it the redacted?
no,
What is it?
no, this is in regards to radio traffic.
Oh, okay. All right.
And
Yep. I listened in on this yesterday, and this is the prosecution wanting to get radio traffic in, but they don't want to call an actual witness to that radio traffic. And I assume it is because they have kind of realized that every time they put a cop on the stand, the defense ruins them.
the state's position that they intend to, they would like to get into that. So
Who's the radio traffic from?
radio traffic from the incident that we've been discussing, it appears to be zone 3 radio traffic. My recollection from looking at the discovery is that there are 4 specific excerpts of radio traffic around the time of the incident. This that I've gotten from the state is an excerpt from one of them. And I'm having some discussions with Mr. Atkins, this is the gentleman, is the state representative who I believe will be presenting it, in regards to other excerpts of radio traffic and what our position is on it, whether we believe it violates confrontation.
Oh, I have to remind myself to
or not. We just like some.
I have to remind myself to put a poll up on this because today court was scheduled to start at 10 a.m. You make a wild guess on when the court actually started.
Time to look through it. I want to review their excerpts. I want to review the actual radio traffic itself. It's about 15 minutes to half an hour. So I'm just asking that we be given some time to look at that, and perhaps if we need to address the issue a little bit later on before it's presented. And I think we can probably do that during the lunch break.
Okay. Mr. Atkins?
Yes, Your Honor. That is correct in regards to Ms. Ladders is the next witness. She is to the state after detective bit is complete, and the radio traffic along with the 911 call and associated CAD reports are going to be, the state intends to introduce those with Ms. Ladders. I provided my.
Yeah, they want the radio traffic in with a witness for the 911 call, the receiver of the 911 call. That's not how it's supposed to be.
Time hacks from the radio traffic is what we intend to introduce. And this morning, I've been speaking with Mr. Steele and Mr. Adams. And the state does agree that if it works out, if detective bitten is complete, close to lunchtime, Ms. Ladders is the next witness after her. So that gives defense counsel adequate time. We can also speak together, and maybe parts of this that we agree to as well.
Whoops. Let's skip ahead to the actual witness, which is
So then we'll come back at 2. So, and then we'll take the afternoon at that point in time, okay? All right. Detective Benton, you're still on oath, madam, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. May continue the examination at this point in time. Mr. Steele, whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
I believe that if we can go back to Monday.
Okay.
When the Honorable Court broke for the day, you were explaining, if you could orient yourself, we were on Mr. Williams number 157. Do you remember that by any chance?
Yes.
Okay, and we were specifically talking about the styrofoam.
I think I can do this in 1.5. And you really can't tell me not to, because this is a premiere and pre-recorded. I hope I will notice if it's too fast. I will notice.
Cup, as you described it, the Burger King styrofoam item,
Yes,
and you were explaining, and I think that's when we stopped, that there's different types of DNA
that's correct.
analysis. Okay. In your experience, have you ever collected or had collected, asked someone on your team to collect an item of like a styrofoam and process it for any evidence?
I would ask the crime scene investigators or the crime scene technicians to collect and
Okay.
either have it sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation for processing or have them swab it and then send the swabs down.
Okay. And the jurors may have heard something about swabbing, but that's just testing, trying to obtain information from that item. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
And the scientists then can potentially examine it for evidence or non-evidence, whatever they find.
Yes, sir.
All right. You mentioned yesterday also, not yesterday, Monday, you used the word prints. you remember that?
Yes, latent prints.
Okay, can you explain that to the jurors?
Latent prints, every single person's fingerprints are unique to them, including identical twins. The one thing that's different is their fingerprints. Crime scene technicians are trained in lifting latent prints, but you have to be very careful and choose between latent prints sometimes and DNA. You can't do one or the other.
Okay. And on that styrofoam item, is it possible, I'm not saying that there are any latent prints, but is it possible to attempt to do that, to try to send it off to the crime lab to try to obtain that type of evidence?
Yes.
Yes, I know she resembles the actor from Silence of the Lambs. I know.
And latent latent means that it's visible, right? That it's usable?
Mhm.
True?
Correct. Most prints are not visible to the plain eye.
Okay. I'd like to go the next, if Mr. Kokomo can zoom in next to on the floorboard on the passenger side rear of the 2004 Nissan Altima. Do you see two items there? They both look dark in color, maybe even black?
Yes.
And are those the items that you discussed earlier?
Yes.
And they're seemingly cellular telephones, is that true?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell, ladies and gentlemen, jury, what type of story, I used your word from the other day, can be contained or found scientifically on a cell phone?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What type of evidence can potentially be found on a cell phone?
You mean physical evidence?
Yeah.
Okay. You can find either fingerprints. You can also use DNA, touch DNA technology on a cell phone.
Okay. There is what appears to be a red garment. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that red garment, could that contain any type of physical evidence that could be looked at?
Yes, it can have DNA evidence, and also fiber evidence would be extremely important.
Tell the jurors what fiber evidence is, if you don't mind.
Their clothing is, made of fibers. So the clothing itself would be sent down to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, the GBI, and they would probably just, under a microscope, pull some fibers to try to compare it possibly to another scene.
Okay. Now, if Mr. Kokomo can go back on Mr. Williams' exhibit number 157. And with Mr. Kokomo's permission, let's zoom in a little bit more on the item. You see the item kind of in the center top. It says the unit or the UNTZ. You see that?
Oh, you're asking me? Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay. That type of item. Do you remember whether the item was filled or not filled or spilled some of its contents, if you remember?
No, the only thing that was taken from the car, because we didn't process the inside of the car. We only photographed, evidence markered, and then we took the firearms and the cell phones. The car was going to be processed at another time by the lead detective or someone of the lead detective's choosing at the annex. So I did not touch or manipulate anything in the car outside of the firearms and the cell phones.
Perfect. You just are preserving it, and then the lead detective, I think you educated us, is Detective David Quinn. Fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then it would be within his purview to have these other items tested at a later time.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. If Mr. Kokomo can zoom out for a minute and we go into the items next to that box on the seat, do you see there maybe, and if you can help us for the jurors that may not have seen this photograph before, can you show us if you see a Sharpie pen?
Yeah, it's dead center.
Do you see it?
Mhm.
Can you
It's dead center.
Can you do the line? And then go through, if you can, with the red line again. Do you see what I'll say looks like a yellow-black pen?
Pens you use, and you leave DNA and fingerprints. And this is in preparation for when Detective Quinn or Officer Quinn or the lead officer, lead investigator comes on the stand. So everything here is in preparation for that. And unless he violates court orders, as in you're not supposed to listen in to testimony, oh, he's in for a field day when he shows up. And I would assume that the prosecution is getting a bit nervous about that, because the defense is really building up a lot of information against him. A lot of it.
You see a tool on the upper center part, a tool looking at silver and black handle. Can you do a red mark if you see that item? Do you see, and Mr. Kokomo can make it clear if you need it, but God bless you. Do you see gloves, like work gloves?
Mhm.
Can you just do something?
Oh.
Okay. And do you see like what I'll call, and I really don't know what it is, so I don't want to misname it, but some sort of strap? Do you see that item?
I'm assuming you're talking about this black.
Yeah. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay. And then do you see the red item up below it? Do you know what that is by any chance?
mean the burgundy thing?
Yes, the burgundy.
I don't know what that is, no.
And then can you read what it says on, you see where it says on the upper, it's not really upper, center right, it says 1/4, like 1/4. Can you read that?
No.
Mr. Kokomo, can you make that a little bigger?
Something to do with paint,
One more time,
quarter sheet,
one more time.
1/4 sheet for paint.
Do you know whether these items are items that are typically found in that type of toolbox?
I have no idea what people keep in their own toolboxes.
All right, now we also see if Mr. Kokomo can pull out a little bit. We also see there, if you look in the bottom floorboard area on the driver's side, do you see that item?
The firearm?
There are two, yes?
Yes.
You see the firearm? And that's one of the firearms you collected, correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you also see, is that a pencil possibly? Is it a pencil looking item next to it
It could be.
or underneath it maybe? All
From
right.
this photo, you really can't tell.
Okay, you see some glass, broken glass? Or it appears to be
Yes.
broken glass? Okay. Now, the three guns, which I believe are stacked up next to the honorable court reporter and between you, were they all semi-automatic firearms?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you told the jurors, I believe it was you, and if it's not, tell them. Typically, when a firearm is working properly, the way it's manufactured is that the missile will come out of the weapon, and then the shell case will be kicked to the right and rear of the shooter. Is that fair to say?
Typically, yes. There are very minimal firearms out there where the shell casing goes in an opposite direction.
Do you have any belief or knowledge that any of the three items, and let me just get what they're marked. Your Honor, may I approach for a second? This is 115C, 114C, 116C. Do you have any reason to believe that any of those firearms, if working properly, would not kick to the right and rear?
No.
Okay. For people who may not have your familiarity, can you just show, and if you don't have gloves, we will get them for you, or I will touch the item. Can you just show where the ejection port is on one of those guns?
If this is a gun, the injection port's in the center. That's the weld. You put it into the welded weapon. You're going to take a magazine and pull it into the welded weapon. This is the chamber. If you haven't already had it cocked back, you're going to slide the slide to the rear, pull it to the rear, and that's going to put one into the chamber. When it fires, the round or the projectile will then come out this way, and the shell casing will come fire from the chamber.
In this vehicle, except for the broken glass,
Mhm.
were all of the windows raised on the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Did you or your team find any shell casings inside of that vehicle?
No, sir.
Do you have any evidence that a weapon was discharged, that type of weapon, not a revolver, a weapon that kicks out a shell casing, a semi-automatic, was fired inside of that vehicle at the
Me
time?
personally, no.
All right. If, with your permission, Mr. Kokomo's permission and the court, I skipped Mr. Williams exhibit number 155, so I'm going backwards a minute here. Mr. Kokomo can show that. Okay, now, in Mr. Williams number 155, this is a photograph, taken from the rear passenger side, towards the rear passenger side of the 2004 Nissan Altima vehicle. Is that a fair, accurate representation?
Yes.
And at this point, to be fair, it appears that the driver's side rear door is ajar. Somebody opened it. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
All right. And nobody's trying to manipulate or fool a jury or anything, but you found it all with the doors closed, but now law enforcement has opened one door.
That's correct.
Okay. And you've already taken pictures of the closed doors, fair?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, on Mr. Williams number 155, we see the part of that black item that we discussed, right? In the center, I don't know, kind of center, lower center.
Yes.
And then we have the broken glass, right?
Mhm.
Are you familiar with the type of safety glass that manufacturers of vehicles put in cars to protect us?
No.
All right. Can you tell from this picture which direction how the glass was shattered, whatever object it was, what direction it was coming from?
No.
All right. The glass missing, is that potentially some of the glass that you showed the jury on the driver's side rear floorboard in Mr. Williams number 157 a moment ago?
Yes, it's possible.
Now, if Mr. Kokomo can pull in closer and show I would like you to orient the jurors to the front passenger seat. From this picture, and there'll be other pictures, can you tell the front passenger seat how far it was moved? Are you familiar with cars in the front seat can move closer or further from the windshield?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how far this seat, rear passenger seat, was moved towards the back?
No.
The time that you came upon the car? All right.
No.
All right. All right, let's talk about Mr. Williams number 156, if that's okay. Okay, and here is another angle, same side of the car, passenger side, fair to say?
Yes.
And the photograph here is capturing more of the front seat. Is that correct?
Yes.
can you tell from this angle, and angles could be deceiving, so can you tell from this angle of the photograph where that front passenger seat is, let's say, in relation to the divider between the two windows, the front and back doors?
No, not based off this angle. It would need to be dead center on the side.
Can you just explain to the jurors about the depth perception? It could distort the angle.
The depth perception can distort the angle of a photograph.
Okay. Let's look at number 158 of Mr. Williams, if that's okay. Now that is, both airbags are deployed, fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And when I say both, just for preciseness, we're talking about the driver's seat airbag comes out of the steering wheel, as well as the passenger front airbag is opened up from the dashboard, fair?
Yes.
Okay. And here, on this photograph, is that you in the upper kind of right side? If you can recognize with the, it looks like the belt with maybe two.
If that is her, she is fit. But that is back in 2013. So this, 11 years later, I don't see much change.
Cell phones, I'm really not sure if they're both cell phones.
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. And you're giving direction to your coworkers, fair to say, or you're at least processing what direction you need to go.
Yes.
Okay. If Mr. Kokomo can zoom in on the front passenger seat. Do you by any chance know now what that item is? The yellow, I'm saying the yellow, if it's not yellow, just correct me. Item.
No, again, the only thing that I took from the vehicle were the 3 firearms and the cell phones. Everything else was preserved and left for the lead detective.
Okay. All right. Mr. Kokomo, if you can help us and go to number 159 when you get a chance. In Mr. Williams, number 159, this is now from where you were standing before. This is from the passenger side looking towards the driver's side front
That's correct.
vehicle, the front person compartment of the vehicle. Fair?
Yes.
Now, tell me if this helps, if this photograph helps you, Mr. Williams, number 159. Do you see the center console with the gear shifts?
Yes.
And do you see the gear shift seemingly in drive? I'm not saying it is in drive, but it looks like it's not in park.
It's in something. I just don't know what it's in, but you're right. It's not in park.
Now, I'd like to know whether you can help us compared to that center console. Is the front passenger seat look like it is moved closer to the back of the vehicle as compared to the driver's seat?
No,
Okay, can you explain why?
it looks like the same line.
Okay, so do you believe that the driver's seat, you see the driver's seat?
Yes.
That is in front, the part that comes to the legs, that is in front of the gear shift? You see that?
I said yes.
Okay, and then do you notice that the passenger seat, the front where the legs go, looks like it's behind the gear shift?
But they're both around the same location. One's not manipulated 5 feet behind the other. So based on the angle of this photo, they could be right there at the same thing. I couldn't tell you unless I'm standing at the car at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, what we are going for here is any suggestion from the state that Mr. Williams was in that car. And Mr. Williams is 6'3". He is just about my height, much skinnier, but just about my height. So when I'm looking at how the back seat in that car, how it's angled and everything, I don't see how he could sit back there without having his knees up on his ears. And if from yesterday, the blood trail was from the passenger rear passenger seat. That was where the blood trail. So I don't understand how the prosecution can claim that's where he was. He wasn't injured. That was the person who was shot, in my opinion. I don't know how they are going to get this together.
Okay. Let's look at the floorboard of the passenger seat front, the items there. You see maybe 2 cords that possibly, to go into electronic devices that look like that's true? One's green, one's white. Or at
They're
least-
cords. I don't know what they go to. Yeah, I can agree that they're cords.
Okay. And then, Mr. Kokomo, if you can blow that up. Do you see another potential item that is maybe a cup where Coca-Cola on it in red? It's white, has different colors on it?
Yes.
Same potential, either paper or styrofoam?
Correct.
Potentially fertile ground if Detective David Quinn wanted to have it analyzed by the crime scene?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. If we can go to Mr. Williams, number 60. I'd like you again to focus on the seat. That's the front passenger area, correct? Floorboard?
Yes,
And do you see the seat where the knees would come to the front passenger seat?
yes,
And do you see where it appears that there's an indentation where it goes into where the gun is laying, into the place where the feet would typically go, if a person sitting there, if there was a person sitting in that seat?
an indentation where?
Going down, you see the carpet, looks like it goes down from the seat towards the floorboard. Do you see that?
No,
You see where Mr. Kokomo is zooming in on?
that's an indentation.
I'm asking you.
That's what I'm asking. I don't consider that indentation. I consider that part of the curb of the interior of the car.
All right.
Yeah, it's carpeted.
Now, Mr. Kokomo blew that up. He was kind enough to blow it up for us. Can you tell whether that seat, the passenger seat, is moved back as far as it can move on that track according to that picture?
It appears to be. I couldn't tell you if that's actually the truth, but it appears to be, yes.
Okay. Now, if Mr. Kokomo can scroll back a little further out, that is one of the guns that you collected, fair to say?
Yes, sir.
All right. If we can go to Mr. Williams, number 161, that is going to be a close-up that you directed to have taken of that firearm that you collected, correct?
That's correct.
All right, now I'd like to go to Mr. Williams, number 162. Now, this, to orient the jurors, is the driver's side rear floorboard. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, and there is 2 additional firearms that you and your capable team collected, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, there's also a hat there. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
And it looks like to me, it says New Era on it. Can you read that?
Yes.
Tell the ladies and gentlemen jury what evidence potentially can be found on a hat if the hat is on the person.
Oh, you could find DNA. You could find hair, possibly with or without the root, which if it has the root, you can definitely try to pull some DNA from that. That would have been found on the hat or potentially found on the hat.
Could fingerprints potentially be found on a hat?
I've never seen where fingerprints have been found on a hat.
That again would be up to Detective Quinn.
That's correct.
Mr. Williams, number 163. By the way, can we go back to 162 if you don't mind? Remember earlier, we talked about the item that there may be something underneath the firearm?
Yes.
Do you see what, I would say is a pencil? Do you see that green item?
I see a green. I couldn't tell you if that's a pencil or not.
Okay. And then do you see the item that looks yellow?
Again, I couldn't tell you if it's a pencil, but it's a yellow something.
Okay. And then the item next to the hat. Do you recognize that to be like a box cutter?
Yes, sir.
You ever call it like that? Okay. And would a box cutter sometimes be found potentially in a toolbox?
I would assume so.
Okay. If we go to Mr. Williams, number 163. Now, do you need another picture to orient this photograph, or do you remember where it was? And if you do, just tell the jurors to orient it.
No, I believe this was the coagulated blood that was on the outside of the vehicle.
And do you know whether in your experience that that's a large amount of blood or a smaller amount of blood? And I know it's all relative. I understand that.
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis. I'll state the objection.
Have you ever seen an artery bleed? A person got to get shot in the artery. Have you ever seen the blood from the artery?
Yes.
Okay. And tell the ladies and jury, if it's coming out, if the blood is not bleeding inside, it's coming out. It's an artery. Could that be a lot of blood coming out of the person?
Of course, yes.
Yeah,
Artery is,
good.
tell the jury what an artery is.
Artery is a vein that basically connects a lot of other veins and has a lot of blood in it. I'm not a medical doctor.
An artery is pumping from the heart, veins are going back to the heart. And they are generally higher pressured, which means a lot of blood comes out at once.
All
All right, number 164, Mr. Williams. I believe we discussed this previously. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
There's a little bit, I'm not saying a little bit, I'm not trying to quantify it, but there's some blood on some of the cash, right?
That's correct.
I need more
And
coffee.
number 6, excuse me, number 165. And that orients the last 2 pictures where they were found compared to placard number 6 and placard number 7. Fair.
Yes.
166. Again, we're going to have a story for the blood. You see the or suspected blood. You see that
Yes.
with the cash around it, right?
Yes.
And then number 9, suspected blood. That's why you thought it was important to memorialize. Fair.
Yes, sir.
And that's a number 167. 168 is just you again showing us the relationship between placard 8 and 9. Is that fair to say?
Not me, but the crime scene tech taking the photograph. Yes.
At your direction.
Well, they would take the photographs as they're trained. My direction was what evidence to be marked.
Understood. Okay. Let's go to number 169, Mr. Williams. Do you recognize this to be, again, we're going back to the rear passenger side of the 2004 Nissan Altima, fair?
That's correct.
And this again is, I know there's a little more to it, but the floorboard area,
Yes, sir.
is that fair? Okay, do we see a, potentially a plastic water bottle or a plastic bottle of some sort stuffed in between the area where you can hold things behind the passenger seat?
Pocket, yes.
The pocket, thank you. Okay, and then there's the Burger King item that we discussed underneath that, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you've already discussed the cell phone and the magazine,
Yes.
the firearm. And there's again that red item that you discussed
Yes, sir.
with the jurors. Do you notice any what's potential or suspected blood on the corner of the seat?
I couldn't tell you what that is.
Okay.
That would have to be
Not the
tested.
world
Okay.
of doom.
And that
Not
again,
in a recording.
You made it clear, I
Jesus
believe that's
Christ.
Detective Quinn, not you.
To have it swabbed would be the lead detective when they were processing the car at the annex. To have it tested would be the GBI
Right, and it starts with Detective Quinn. I guess I was
or
inarticulate.
whoever he would have delegated that job to.
Okay. 170 of Mr. Williams, you see a placard 10,
Yes, sir.
and it's a similar photograph of what we just looked in, but a little clearer, closer. Fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Does it help in this picture, Mr. Williams, number 170, those items that are red in color on the, looks like the seat where the seat folds into below, going downward towards the floorboard. Do you see that?
I see it, but it still does not help, no.
Okay. Number 171 is simply the, I assume that that's you, but if it's not, just correct me. And you were just making the weapon safe and also showing what the weapon, that it was loaded.
That's correct.
All right. The next one's 172. As you explained to us so well, that's a close-up of the weapon.
That's correct.
And you also capture, obviously, the serial number of the weapon.
That's correct.
And then 173 is simply, you have to have identification, so that is the license plate. Fair to say?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then 174, once removed, you have both of the, there's a Metro PCS and another cell phone. You see that?
Yes, an LG.
Okay. Now, whose purview would it be? Whose power would it be to say, I want the contents, potentially want the contents of those cell phones to be analyzed?
That would be up to the lead detective and most likely through a search warrant.
Through a search warrant, I guess you said. Is that what you said?
That's correct.
And the lead detective, I've said it 4 times, same person.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. I think we've gone through every other. But if you don't mind going back, 105, Mr. Williams.
I wish there was. Yeah, I've been looking for a stream where they have closed captions, but it appears as that only shows up live or a few days later. I don't know why. It's a bit unnerving.
And if Mr. Kokomo would be so kind to zoom in to the picture where you can see the front passenger headrest, seat headrest. Does that picture assist, or is the angle not helpful to how far back the front passenger seat is positioned?
No.
Okay. Now, is it fair to say that the further back the front passenger seat is, then the less leg room there is for someone to be sitting behind the front passenger?
That's correct.
In 2013, and thank you, sir. In 2013, if you can go back to that time, did your agency have access to something called Total Station?
I don't know what that is.
Okay. Okay. Do you know, and I'm talking about September 11th of 2013, did your agency have the capability of using computer to shoot, to scale the interior of a car?
I don't believe.
A reminder, hit that thumbs up. I'm very pleased that you are all here. The thousands and thousands. No, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised by yesterday. I think we peaked at 140 something at the same time watching this, and I'm very, very thankful for that. So keep doing it. Thumbs up and everything, and thank you. Thank you so much. I just thought I'd pause here and say that.
Believe so.
Did your agency have, and I know this, measuring rulers? 2013.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Would it be Detective Quinn's responsibility to measure, if he saw fit, how much room there was between the rear passenger seat area and the seat in front, the front passenger seat, to determine whether a person, let's say, is 6'3" tall, had the legroom to fit in that area?
Would have no.
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis.
Counsel is assuming facts not necessary.
I assume Mr. Williams' height has been documented, but I can say with myself being 6'3" and a bit, I rarely fit in the back seat of any car unless they push the seat way forward. And that's not, yeah, I mean, no, that's very uncomfortable. No. No, I haven't ridden in the back seat of a car for many years because I drive my own car. But no. You simply don't fit in the back seat unless they push that front passenger seat all the way forward.
I stand the objection.
Did Detective Quinn have a measuring stick to his, or the
Oh yeah, and with all the crap that was in the driver's side passenger back seat, how are there supposed to be 4 people in there? What, did he sit on the toolbox? Did he sit on the pens? Did he sit on the whatevers? I don't really think so. I really don't. So it's a big discrepancy. I mean, one of the officers even said 4 to 5 people, which means 2 in the front, 3 in the back seat. That's just plain stupid. No. That, no.
Atlanta Police Department, your office, have a measuring device that could tell the jurors how much room there was between the front passenger seat, as found by you and your teammates on the scene of the 2004 Ultima, and the rear seat?
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis.
Asked and answered.
I stand the objection.
That was not asked and answered by any stretch of the imagination, in my opinion.
Now, could a bullet have gone through that rear, very rear passenger side window to break it?
I would have no idea how that passenger side window was broken.
Would you know how many objects, whatever object that was, that broke that, how many objects went through that area?
No.
Do you remember noticing?
Yeah, what the defense is arguing here is that the gunshot that ended the person's was not from within the car or from the robbery we heard about yesterday. It might have been cops firing. Might have been. And looking at everything in totality, the way the cops refused to collect evidence properly, refused to get the surveillance video, and no recordings whatsoever. Yeah, it's a little bit suspect, just a little bit.
A purported bullet hole through the passenger side front headrest?
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis.
Counsel testified.
I'll sustain the question as to form. You can rephrase it, Mr. Steele.
Did you observe, when you were there with the 2004 Nissan Altima red vehicle, did you observe a potential hole through the front passenger side headrest?
I did not process the inside of that car and did not search or go into abundance because I did not want to leave any of my DNA or fibers or fingerprints or anything like that in the car because they had yet to process it. The only thing I did was grab the firearms, I rendered them safe, and I grabbed the cell phones. Outside of that, I did not get close enough inside that vehicle so that they could properly process it once back at the annex.
That would, again, it's the same question, be the lead detective.
That's correct.
And you realized when you were there that you couldn't, I think your word was, contaminate that vehicle because it potentially held a lot of valuable evidence.
Potentially, yes, sir.
Yeah, the defense alleged that you can see what appears to be a hole in the headrest of the front passenger seat. And I mean, there could be a lot of reasons for that, but one of them is somebody was firing a bullet from the outside at the scene.
You pull up State's Exhibit 119C as in boy. Do you have State's Exhibit? Yeah, C as in boy. Do you have State's Exhibit in front of you, 119C by any chance? You did? Okay. And that is already in evidence, correct? Okay. Your Honor, may I display with the Honorable Prosecutor's Assistant State's Exhibit number 119C as in Colette Charlie?
Can you all pull up 11C? 119C. Okay, all right.
While that's going on, were laser, you know what I mean by a laser pointer?
Mhm.
Were they used in your line of business in September 2013 if you wanted to show direction of something?
I'm not real sure when we got those. I don't know what year we got those.
Okay, in 119C, can you zoom in, Mr. Kokomo, oh no, excuse me. Okay. The Honorable Prosecutor Atkins, on where the glass is broken, would you mind doing that? Now, Detective, can you pull it down just a little bit if you don't mind? Thank you, sir.
That's going down.
No, you're good. That's perfect. Thank you. This is how you found the car with the door shut. True?
That's correct.
And do you see there the space where the Honorable Prosecutor Atkins was kind of to zoom in? You see the space between where the frame is, where the glass is broken, and the rest of the frame of the car?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir. Your Honor, I don't believe I have any other questions. I want to thank you so much. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Cross, any additional? They haven't been asked already?
Please court, Your Honor. Good morning, Detective Benton.
Good morning.
My name is Matt Shard. I represent Shannon Stillwell. My understanding is you're an investigator with Atlanta Police Department, correct?
I'm a detective, yes.
Okay, detective. Okay. How long have you been with APD?
A little over 22 years.
22 years. And is that the only agency you've ever been with?
Yes.
All right. Are you generally, and I'm not going to.
Just a forewarning, I'm not entirely pleased with the continuation of this cross-examination, because Mr. Steele has set up really, really good for Mr. Queen, whatever his name was, the lead detective. And you don't want to give away too much. Now, I understand you all have your own client and your own responsibilities, but personally, I would have let this go, but let's listen to it.
pop quiz you on specifics, but generally, are you familiar with APD protocols?
Yes,
All right.
Again, because you are now forewarning the prosecution on what will happen. Now, they are already at that, but the more questions you put in, the more the prosecution can prepare Mr. What's his face, the lead investigator. And they're not supposed to, but they will. I'm almost positive they will, because I don't trust the ethics of the prosecution.
Including the APD protocols on investigations.
yes, sir.
All right, awesome. How long have you been an investigator or a detective? I'm sorry.
Since 2007,
16 years,
almost 17,
almost 17. And how long have you been a homicide detective?
almost 15.
And you have familiarity with the way APD conducts homicide investigations, correct?
Yes, sir.
As a homicide detective, you would agree that the collection of surveillance videos is an important part of an investigation.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Specifically, surveillance videos that would potentially show relevant information to the case.
That's correct.
Would you agree that if you are aware of information that something's supposedly happened at a specific location, surveillance video could help prove or disprove that notion?
Yes.
Okay. So if a witness said something happened at a specific location, you can go get video and then you don't have to rely on the credibility of the witness.
If the video is available and the cameras are working, yes.
If the video is available and the cameras were rolling. Okay.
Yes.
And you would agree that that can prove something happened, but also can prove something didn't happen.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, the collection of surveillance video, let's say the surveillance video outside of a business, who, as part of the homicide investigation, who is the person that's in charge of quarterbacking or ensuring that these things are collected?
The lead detective.
Okay, that is in the lead detective's purview.
Yes, sir.
And now, does the lead detective always collect the video?
No.
Okay. Is there a specific person in charge of collecting relevant surveillance video?
Yes, our Homeland Security Unit.
You said Homeland Security Unit?
Yes.
Okay. And is that part of APD?
Yes.
Okay. So there is a unit within APD whose primary purpose is to collect relevant surveillance video.
No.
Okay. Explain that to me.
Within our Homeland Security Unit, we have cyber investigators who are experts in collecting video surveillance or DVR systems, and because they've gone through the specific training. They do a lot of other things within the Homeland Security Unit, but they're the people that we rely on when we see there's video surveillance. We call them and have them come download the video surveillance or pull everything from the DVR system, unless we take the system back to them.
So we have people within APD with specialized training that the lead detective can call to ensure that relevant surveillance is collected,
That's
or at least an
correct.
attempt is made to collect.
That's correct.
And to collect relevant surveillance, are there times where the business owner consents to the collection?
Yes.
Okay. And if a business owner doesn't consent, what legal mechanisms do you have to obtain relevant surveillance video?
Search warrant.
A search warrant. Okay. So you can, as lead detective, you can apply for a search warrant, obtain a search warrant, and then arm the Homeland Security Unit with said search warrant.
If the judge foresees and agrees that there's enough probable cause, then yes.
Okay. And who's the individual that makes the decision to apply for a search warrant for surveillance video?
The decision will be made solely off of either the lead detective or another detective that he's working with.
Okay. Lead detective. Okay. Let me, you said you have 15 years experience in homicide investigations. I'd like to talk about timeframes for the availability of videos. Is it fair to say, before I go into specifics, is it fair to say that the time frame for the availability of video differs from business to business, system to system?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there, assuming that video surveillance is recorded at a business, what are some of the timeframes that you've seen as an investigator, as far as how long the surveillance video is maintained by businesses?
The minimal time that I've seen is 12 hours, and the video is immediately overridden by another video, up to a couple of weeks.
Okay, a couple weeks. Now, how quickly, as a homicide detective, how quickly are you assigned to investigate a homicide?
When the officers contact homicide,
Okay.
advising they're on an active scene, the supervisor in homicide then contacts who's ever at the top of the rotation. we have a unit rotation. So let's say I'm at the top of that unit rotation. Doesn't matter what time or what day that case comes up, that's going to be mine. I then go to the bottom of the rotation and work my way back up. That way, each detective has around about the same number of cases at the end of the year. So it would be whatever supervisor is working would immediately contact that lead detective, whether at home, they're at work, and they take the lead role immediately.
So a 911 call comes in, said, responding officer arrives, and then if there's unfortunately a dead body, homicide is called.
That's correct.
And is it fair to say you're generally on the scene or working on the case, assigned to the case in a matter of hours?
A number of hours, yes. It depends on how long it takes to contain and secure the scene, and if the person actually did expire from their injuries.
Okay, and typically, that lead detective that's on the scene, they're leading the sole investigation on the case, correct? Typically, there's not concurrent investigations,
Sometimes there are.
like feds, maybe, other law
Feds,
enforcement.
Other law enforcement agencies, yes, there are concurrent investigations going on, yes.
As an investigator, a detective, I'm sorry, when you find evidence, do you typically broadcast it to the world?
It depends on what the evidence is.
Okay, so if you find physical evidence, do you typically run and tell reporters all about it, or do you keep some information close to the vest, so to say?
Well, 2013, things were a little different than they are here in 2024. It depends on the detective. Back in 2013, the detective could make the choice to contact a reporter straight out and advise them that they needed some help and give them part of the investigation, information on the investigation. Back in 2013, they could do that.
Okay, would that be to ask the public's help in identifying people and things of that nature?
I wouldn't know what any other detective would do with that information. All I can tell you is that you could do that back in 2013.
Okay, when you develop a suspect, do you typically inform the suspect? Is it policy that you have to inform the suspect that they are a suspect?
No.
Okay, so you could keep that within law enforcement.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a time during an investigation where law enforcement may be investigating a crime, but a suspect would have no reason to be collecting evidence or doing their own investigation. You would agree?
I wouldn't know. I would not. I wouldn't know. Every investigation is different. There's been times where I've investigated a particular person. They were well aware that they were being investigated, even though I had never mentioned it and never spoken to them, but they knew that they were being investigated. So I couldn't tell you what other people think we're doing.
Okay, but going back to, I guess, my initial question, it's not policy that you would inform anyone.
Sometimes, yes, sometimes no. Like I said, it depends on the case and it depends on the investigation.
Have you had cases where you were investigating where there was a time frame, you said for surveillance video, 12 hours to a couple weeks, where you were conducting an investigation, but you did not inform any suspects of the investigation?
I'm sure there has been.
The truth is that's the majority of the homicide investigations you've done, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Basis.
What? Object to the testimony. The truth is, counsel testified.
I'll stand as a form of question. You can rephrase.
Okay. The majority of your homicide investigations, you have not informed the suspects that they're being investigated, correct?
Well, seeing as the majority of my homicide cases since 2019 are where children have been killed by either a parent or a guardian, they're well aware of their suspects.
Okay, well, all right, let's talk about pre-2019.
Mr. Sharp, can we stop you right here? You probably got some more examination, so
About 2 minutes.
I don't trust you
Thank you.
for time, and neither do I most lawyers, because you all posture way
No,
too
I'm
long.
not singled out.
That's right. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, as earlier indicated, we're going to go ahead and stop and have lunch at this point in time. Mr. Sharp, you're welcome to pick up your examination after lunch. Detective Bell.
Yeah, and as it seems, those 2 minutes went on a bit longer, and still not entirely happy about this, because there's a lot of questions here that they could have impeached Mr. What's his face directly. Let's see how long lunch was. 1:36. Okay, let's say 1:40. 2:40. That's 1 hour. 3:10, an hour and a half. 2 hours. 2:10. A 1 hour lunch took 2 hours and 15 minutes. This is so disrespectful. First of all, the jurors have to be there. They get paid $25 per day. They are leaving family and work to be there. And this is the respect they get from court.
Detective Benton, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
We were talking about collecting surveillance video. if you
Yes.
recall. Okay. Regarding the September 11, 2013 incident, I know that you were involved. Were you the individual in charge of collecting any surveillance video in that?
No,
And who would that have been?
the lead detective,
Who was
I believe Detective Quinn.
Detective Quinn? All right. I'd like to show to you a couple of pictures that you've already identified. If I could publish, Mr. Kokomo, if you could publish Williams 101 for me on the screen. And you got that screen? Okay, you got the screen. You have identified this picture already as being an accurate depiction of September 11, 2013, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Above the car, do you see a McDonald's
Yes,
sign? Okay. Could you, Mr. Kokomo, Williams 156? And is this also a depiction from September 11, 2013?
yes,
Okay, and this would be at the corner, essentially the corner of Cleveland and Old Hateville, correct?
that's correct.
Okay, and you would agree that at that time,
I mean, they have talked about these surveillance videos from the McDonald's across the street numerous times. You don't have to ask every witness about it. But during lunch, I assume he talked with the other lawyers, and yeah, I'm not too happy about it, but I'm not there. I don't see the jurors, and how they react. But I assume the defense attorneys watch them rigorously for their reactions.
there was a McDonald's restaurant on the corner of Old Hateville and Cleveland Avenue, correct?
That's correct.
On the other side of Old Hateville Road, but also on the southwest corner of Old Hateville and Cleveland.
If you say so.
Okay, at the corner of Old Hateville and Cleveland. We'll
Yes.
just keep it simple. At that time, that restaurant was open?
I have no idea.
Okay, as a Atlanta police detective for a number of years, you are aware of that McDonald's at the corner of Old Hateville and Cleveland, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and did that McDonald's have surveillance video to your knowledge?
I have no idea.
You don't know, okay. Do you know if that McDonald's, we're seeing pictures from September 2013, is that McDonald's still standing today? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you about one more case, and that is a death of Donovan Thomas on January 10th of 2015. Were you the lead investigator in that case?
Don't believe so.
Okay, so you would not have been involved in charge of collecting surveillance involving the death of Donovan Thomas in 2015?
No.
Okay, do you know who the lead investigator on that case was?
No.
Is there a detective, James or Jim Thorpe, that works for Atlanta Police Department as a homicide detective?
No.
What, in January 2015, was there an APD detective, James Thorpe, that worked for Atlanta Homicide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Take the court's indulgence. I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, Mr. Matthews Jr., go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, detectives.
How you doing, sir?
My name is Attorney Carson Matthews Jr. I represent Mr. Marquavius Huey. Just a couple questions. You remember telling this jury that you didn't want to touch certain items in the vehicle because you didn't want to contaminate any of the evidence.
That's correct.
And that's because those certain items, that physical evidence, tell the story.
It could potentially, yes.
Okay, no further questions.
Anyone else? Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now it's time for redirect, and this will be very basic questions in an attempt to undo the damage Miss Clarice did to the state's case. Well, they try. I'm trying, Judge, I'm trying.
Then on cross-examination, you were asked if certain items in the car could obtain evidence. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Do you typically collect every piece of paper, fabric, fiber, cup, and every item at a crime scene that you're processing?
No.
Why not?
It depends on the case. Every case is different. Every time we investigate something, the scenes are different. The individuals involved are different. Every case is different. So it typically depends on the totality of the circumstances behind that case.
And Detective Ben, how do you determine what you will not collect from crime scene?
If I'm the crime scene, in charge of the crime scene, like on this one, if the lead detective directs me to do something, then I will do it. But in this particular instance, I was asked to just preserve and send the car onto the annex so they could spend quality time in a controlled environment. But other times, it literally depends on the investigation and the circumstances of the case.
What did you understand your purpose to be in processing this Nissan Altima on September 11th, 2013?
I wasn't to process the Nissan Altima. I was to have the crime scene techs photograph the Nissan Altima to get the firearms out because the vehicle would need to be transported, and the vehicle would be transported by a contract civilian tow company. And we can't have firearms and cell phones inside vehicles that are being transported by a contracted civilian or a civilian contractor. So my job was to take out the firearms, render them safe, and have our crime scene units transport them back so they can be processed and get the cell phones back to the lead detective. Photograph, mark, and that was the extent of what I was allotted to do.
Do you recall some questions on cross-examination about shell casings?
Yes.
Are shell casings stationary once they're?
This is stupid because if the shot was from inside the car, it doesn't really matter how it bounces around if there were no shell casings in that car. And from what angle, if they fired from outside of the car. This is just stupid.
Ejected from the car.
No, they're not.
You were also asked on cross-examination about the windows on this Nissan Altima. You recall that?
Yes, sir.
Now, if I can have a little help from defense counsel, I want to publish Jeffrey Williams Defense Exhibit 105. Would you be so kind? And Detective, while they're pulling that up, what do you mean when you said that shell casings are not stationary once they're checked? Can you expand on that?
Well, they could, when they exit the chamber of the rep, or when they exit the chamber, they're going to move. And depending on if you're moving, they're going to move at the rate that you're moving. So if I'm running and shooting, it's not like it just pops up and goes straight to the ground. It's also going to move. Then you've got people running around before the scene is secured. They could be kicking shell casings. They can be moving shell casings. Other vehicles could be running shell casings over. Shell casing can get in people's tread of their shoes. So you never know when you get there exactly where the shell casings landed. Wind could pick them up and move them. We've seen that before.
Thank you. And thank you for publishing that. Is it possible to zoom in a little bit on the windows of this vehicle? Thank you. Detective Ben, do you recall in cross-examination some questions about the windows on the Nissan Altima and whether they were up or down?
Yes, sir.
Looking at this exhibit, what would you say the front passenger window, is it up or down?
Sort of 3/4 of the way up.
Now, do you know whether shell casings were ejected from this vehicle before you arrived on the process?
No,
How about while the car was fleeing from police?
I didn't have any of that information when I got to the scene.
How about while the car was careening through the yard before coming over the event?
Didn't have any of that information either.
And do you know if any shell casings were ejected from the Nissan Altima crashed into the side of the corner?
I do not know.
Unless you know. Have you ever seen occasions in your time working investigations where shell casings have been caught by clothing?
Absolutely.
Now, Detective Ben, I want to transition for a second. There were some questions on cross-examination about fingerprints and DNA. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you always get all pieces of evidence tested for touch DNA or lack of fingerprints?
No.
Why not?
One, the GBI won't do it.
The GBI won't do it. This is interesting since the more evidence you have, I mean, this is a murder investigation. And to hear that, for me personally, I don't know if people are used to it in the United States, but to hear from a veteran investigator, a veteran detective, that a crime scene lab simply won't do it. Because, well, as you will hear, they're too backed up. They have too much to do. So we can't be bothered. Because they might not even test it, so why bother collecting it? For me, that would be reasonable doubt in any investigation. If the crime scene lab is too backed up, fund it. Fund it. No, let's have a RICO trial for a year. Instead, that's good handling of money instead of, I don't know, hire 2 or 3 more technicians in the lab. When this trial concludes, from start to finish, with pre-trial and everything, we are talking about around $10 million. Easily, in my opinion. That's a lot of investigative tools and personnel they could have had instead to speed up and get proper evidence. You know what I think? I think it's intentional. Because if you don't test, you don't get exculpatory evidence.
Two, it depends on the nexus of that piece of evidence to the scene and whether or not you may have a suspect identified. If you don't have all of those things, the GBI will not test it. They're extremely backlogged, just like most other labs out across the country. So, you may have it swabbed or you may not have it swabbed. Depends on what that particular piece of evidence, how it's connected to the case.
And the investigations you work before submitting any evidence to GBI, do you do that before or after investigation?
During.
Can you explain that?
Yes, so if I have any evidence that needs to go to the GBI, I first have to contact the GBI to basically fill out a form that states that this is what I want done on the evidence. This is the evidence. This is sort of a very, very brief synopsis of what this evidence means to this case, the type of case that it is a homicide case or it's not a homicide case. And then you put on there the type of testing or processing you want. So if it's ballistic evidence, it's firearm, you're going to collect the ballistics box and tell them what type of firearm and all that stuff to get it tested. If it's DNA, you're going to click the DNA box, and then you're going to have to determine, what type of DNA you want. You will submit it to the GBI, but it could take, if it's DNA, it could take 2 years to get any information back. And at that point, you may get information back stating, we're not going to test this based on you've already gotten this far in your investigation.
And in investigations that you work, before you determine what should be submitted to GBI, you typically take statements and speak with witnesses before making that determination.
Yes, I do.
Is it common practice to take items collected, the data collected directly to GBI for testing?
No.
Why not?
A lot of times you hold on to evidence and you'll place it into either the crime scene techs will hold on to it for a couple of days and for the detective to determine what this evidence means to the case. And then they can determine whether or not they're going to have to send it to the GBI, have it transported to the GBI, or just have it placed into property as evidence where it's in secure storage.
Unless you erase the recordings because some of the detectives and investigators and officers in this case chose to delete recordings until they got the answers they needed. And if they do that, why would I trust them to handle the other evidence? If they say every bullet hole, entering apartments, entering everything came from police officers themselves.
If we send it right off the bat and we don't have any basis behind it, then we're not really wanting to know what we're testing it for or why we're testing it. Therefore, the GBI is not going to test it, so there's no reason to get it down there because they're just going to turn around and send it right back.
You had discussed having a nexus for an item before submitted to GBI. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And if you were conducting an investigation where a vehicle was at issue, if you did not have a nexus to any items being touched in the trunk, would you submit items in the trunk to GBI?
No, I would not.
Now, before you arrived, do you know whether any officers on scene checked the vehicle for additional occupants before you were on scene?
No, I do not.
And do you know whether the initial responding officers closed any doors before you arrived?
No.
One brief moment.
Yes, sir.
No further questions. Thank you.
Anything further? Yes.
Oh, Miss Benton is off the stand. Oh yeah. Before I forget, let's see if I can find it somewhere. Oh, never mind. Oh, read a bit of recross here.
State's Exhibit, Your Honor, may I show what's already been marked and admitted by this honorable court, which is State's Exhibit number 143C. It's incorrect.
Yes, you may.
Detective, are you familiar with this type of report by any chance?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and this is the, what's entitled Official Report of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Division of Forensic Sciences, or what I think people call the crime lab. Is that fair to say?
The GBI crime lab, yes.
Yeah, NGBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, right?
That's correct.
And what you were saying was sometimes it's hard to submit evidence to the crime lab if there are no suspects. Is that?
That's not what I said at all.
Tell us what you said if you.
No, what I said was this, the evidence has to have some sort of a nexus to the crime or a suspect in order to submit it. A lot of times when you do submit stuff, you can let them know why you don't have a suspect listed, and they'll still test it. It just depends. Every case is different.
Okay, and I just wanted to make that clear, but in 143C, do you see where it says case individuals on the screen?
Yes,
And then it does list 3 suspects as Mr. Bean, Mr. Prothrow, Mr. Murphy, you see that?
it lists 3 subjects, not suspects.
What did I say?
You said suspects. They're not
apologize.
suspects, they're subjects.
I apologize, thank you. And then it has victim, and that's an officer, you know that?
I know Roberson, yes.
Officer, okay. All right, now, this was submitted, if you can tell, to the crime lab. Let's see the date. Do you know the date?
I don't know the date of submission. I know the date of the report.
Let's see if you go down a little bit, if you don't mind, Madam President, I think that's you. You see where it says October 24th, 2013 in the center, and the following evidence was submitted. Do you see that?
Yes,
So that's approximately a month and maybe 13 days after September 11, 2013. Does that sound right?
sounds about right. Yes.
And the crime lab would accept things, when I say things, items to test at any time, as long as it was from an agency with law enforcement. Is that true?
Between the hours of 9 and 4, yes, on Monday through Friday.
Okay. All right. And thank you so much. May I just see 126C first? Because I'm not sure. If you do it right. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to ask the detective to look at what's already in evidence, State's Exhibit number 126C. All right, as in Colette, Charlie. Do you see on your screen, Detective 126C as in Colette?
Yes,
And do you recognize, it's in evidence, but do you recognize this type of item, by any chance?
I have not seen this before.
All right. Well, since it's in evidence, you see at the top, it says, it's being blocked, but the second line says Jeffrey Lamar Williams. You see that?
Yes,
And then Jeffrey L. Williams. You see that?
yes,
And then senior, and then Jeffrey L. Williams.
yes.
Okay. And then the date below, or the date of birth below that.
Mr. Williams was 6'3" and 140 pounds. Jesus Christ, that's skinny. I'm a bit taller, and I have 130 pounds on the guy at that time. Jesus Christ, that's skinny. Oh.
See that says August 16, 1991.
That's correct.
And then do you see the description? It's a black-skinned man. You see that?
Description is black male, 6'3", 140 pounds.
Okay. And the 6'3" is height.
Yes,
Okay. And then that has arrest date to the right. You see that it says 9/9, which is September 9, 2013.
yes,
And that would be 2 days before 9/11, 2013, right?
yes, and yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you so much.
Yeah, that is from one of the objections from the state that Mr. Williams is 6'3", as facts not in evidence, and there it was, fact in evidence. Good catch from the defense.
Units.
Oh, come on. Don't do this to me.
Now, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation has different units to it under that umbrella. And by that, I mean they have an investigative team, right? They have law enforcement officers, correct?
That's correct.
And they have, like you, have crime scene analysts, right?
I'm not a crime scene analyst.
No. I didn't mean like you. I meant like your agency.
Yes.
They have crime scene technicians.
No, they have crime scene investigators.
Okay.
Their crime scene investigators are sworn. They're not civilians, are civilians. So we have crime scene technicians and they have crime scene investigators.
And then I'm not saying they don't have other sections, but then they have scientists. Is that true?
Forensic scientists, yes.
And that's what you were referring to, and I was referring to as the Georgia Crime Lab.
Yes.
Medical examiners, if you know.
I know they have a medical examiner's office. It's the DeKalb County Medical Examiner's Office. I don't believe it's attached to the building at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab.
Do you know if the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab have their own medical examiners throughout our state?
I know they have a juvenile pediatric pathologist that works there.
Then they have all the things you talked about, DNA analysis section, right?
Yes,
They have fingerprint section, right?
yes.
Ballistics or firearm section, right? Okay. With regards to shell casings that come out of a weapon after it's discharged, you already said that there were no shell casings found in that car when you took the photographs that you noticed, right?
No, that's not what I said.
What did you say?
I said that I was not looking for shell casings, therefore I did not go looking for them. I did not see any, so I did not look for them.
Okay, but you didn't see any.
I wasn't looking for them, no.
Well, if you would have seen one, you would have
No.
photographed it, right?
Yes, it would have been photographed. It was in plain view, yes.
And it would have been collected.
No,
It would have been left with Detective Quinn.
no, I would have called Detective Quinn and asked what he wanted us to do with the shell casing.
Okay. Tell the ladies and gentlemen jury any evidence you have that a gun was fired from inside that car anytime from the time that Robertson L. was involved to the time that that car was walked up upon by you.
That's not a question I can answer.
Do you have any evidence that a
That's
firearm was?
literally not a question I can answer. The only thing I can answer is how I processed that scene and the firearms that I took. I cannot tell you if there was any evidence inside that car to suggest that a firearm was fired because I did not process that car.
Yeah. He set that up poorly. You don't really want to, at the finality on your recross, have that out, because she clearly said that over and over and over again. That was a bit of a misstep, but in totality, great for the defense. This witness is
You
great
said
for the
that
defense.
you collect any evidence that may be important. Did you say something like that?
That's not what I said. I said my job on scene was to photograph the scene, preserve what was inside, except for the firearms and the cell phones. I took those out, and that's because I was advised to render the firearms safe, handed the cell phones, I believe, over to Detective Quinn, and then anything else that was involving that car was to be processed at a later date, and the car was then to be transported after being escorted down to the annex.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Anyone else? Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
All right. May Detective Benton be permanently temporarily excused the witness.
Your Honor, temporarily.
All right, Detective Benton, I'm going to temporarily excuse you as a witness. For now, you're free to go about your use of dues and avocation. We'll give you plenty of head time when we need to call you back. Please don't discuss your testimony with anybody except the attorneys in this case, okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, madam.
All right. Hello, Mr. Jingles. Well, look who joined us at the very end, because I need to prepare for work. And I need to prepare for work. And I don't want to be late as I was yesterday. Again, thank you everybody for showing up. Thank you for subscribing and giving me all the thumbs up and showering me with super chats and gifted memberships. Hello, Mr. Jingles. Again, as I always say, hug your family. Unless your family is crap, then screw them and give your love to the people who deserve it. Or cats, or pets. Okay. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.